Hi everybody, I just thought I'd do this very short 15-minute video on inward processing. Certainly since the beginning of this year, inward processing has turned out to be quite a popular customs regime for traders. So the first thing we need to know about inward processing is that it is a trade facilitation regime for which you can obtain relief from duty and or the VAT. And the duty can vary from normal customs duty to anti-dumping duty to countervailing duty to any safeguarding duty that is applicable to those goods. And IP can be done in lots of different ways. There is a certain reason why people want to do inward processing, and that is mainly to carry out a process to those goods that they're importing. But inward processing is not just about repair or maintenance of goods or bringing in raw materials to carry out a process to. It isn't. You can actually carry out simple things like unpacking, repacking. These are what they call usual forms of handling. And therefore, it is the simplest of methods that can be used to carry out inward processing. You don't have to do a full manufacturing process for the items to be classed as a process. However, you can obviously import those goods to carry out a process too. There isn't a problem on that. But you can also carry out repairs or maintenance to those goods that you import. Now, one of the biggest problematic areas has been that traders have found is that certainly from the beginning of this year, that if goods are being imported for a repair or a maintenance, as lots of businesses are maintenance, repairers of goods, etc. However, the law is absolutely correct by saying you are not allowed to reclaim VAT on goods that don't belong to the importer of record. So if you're not the owner of those goods at import, then you are not eligible to reclaim the VAT back on those goods, which is now causing a major problem to those particular clients. So it is very, very problematic, hence the reason why inward processing is proving to be a very, very popular customs regime at this moment. And HMRC, in fairness, they're doing a very good job by trying to promote that inward processing is the way forward for companies that are importers of goods for repair that the importer doesn't actually own. So it is important to understand that IP is the right thing for you to possibly do. And myself at Strong and Heard, I tend to look after all of the IP applications, and I help many, many different clients do the applications, and we submit those applications in full. Because normally the application, which is the SP3 application, which is available online, and I always actually say to traders, the best one to use is the print and post form, whereas sometimes the one on the gateway isn't as good as the print and post form. But the print and post form allows you to answer the questions properly, etc. And there is a self-assessment questionnaire that goes with that application. Now, the problem is that those self-assessment questionnaires are not visible on the government website. So on gov.uk, under inward processing, the actual self-assessment questionnaire is not there. So unbeknown to traders who don't understand about inward processing, they would submit a normal application on the pretense that basically it would get authorized. And the answer is no, it wouldn't. So you'd be then sent a message from HMRC to say it's either on hold or rejected because you need to fill in the self-assessment questionnaire. At Strong and Heard, I certainly help my clients or our clients to produce the self-assessment questionnaire along with the application. But again, lots of traders don't know that you can't just submit the self-assessment questionnaire without being very thorough. Now, being thorough means that you need to submit as part of your application and self-assessment questionnaire potential documents that show you've got adequate processes and procedures, because with inward processing, like any other of the customs regimes, it is treated that you meet the AEO criteria, which is the Authorised Economic Operator criteria to operate inward processing or any other duty relief regimes. So the criteria needs to be met, and therefore you have to have processes and procedures in place for you to operate inward processing. It doesn't mean that you need to become an AEO to operate inward processing. You don't. You just need to be making sure that you operate the procedure in line with the AEO criteria. So that is really, really an important thing to remember when you're submitting your application, because you have to be really thorough within the self-assessment questionnaire and show customs that you have an adequate set of procedures to enable you to handle the application and the mechanics of running and working with inward processing. If you don't show that you've got adequate processes and procedures in place, then HMRC could take a dim view and not authorise an IP authorisation to you, which is a lot of time spent when you could have done other things along the way. However, you are where you are. Certainly Strong and Heard and with myself, we obviously operate a helpline where we can help clients through our one call service. I help clients to do their application. I also teach inward processing. I've been doing inward processing even before I started with Strong and Heard. So I've been doing inward processing for the best part of 30 years. So there ain't a great deal that I don't know about inward processing and what the requirements are to get you a good authorization through. So the main mechanics of understanding inward processing, again, you've got to understand that good record keeping is paramount to ensuring that you submit your documentation and your schedules on time, which is known as a bill of discharge. Bill of discharge number 1 is for full authorization, and a bill of discharge number 3 is for simplified. Now, simplified inward processing is the old name for it. It's now called authorization by declaration. So that is applicable to only 3 times a year, up to a maximum value of £500,000 per shipment. So as long as you are within those thresholds, then you can do authorization by declaration or simplified IP, as most people know it as. However, you are limited as to what you can do within authorization by declaration. So you have to read the correct areas on the simplified authorization by declaration inward processing. So you have to read what the requirements are and if you meet those requirements to do it. So with IP, you've got to be able to demonstrate that you can submit your bills of discharge on time, which is either monthly reporting or quarterly reporting. Quarterly reporting is classed as a simplification within inward processing, but you have to be able to demonstrate that you can manage your IP correct. Otherwise, if you don't manage IP correctly, it will tie you up in knots. And it takes a lot of hard work and effort to unpick all of the things that you may have done incorrectly. So whilst I help clients with IP applications, etc., I also teach the subject and ensure that people understand terminology within inward processing, as there is a lot of terminology which is new to some clients. So it is important that everybody understands what the role of inward processing is. Now, I always say, when you look at inward processing to do it, you need to consider several pieces of criteria before you even consider doing inward processing. And those things are, firstly, I'll just give you a couple of examples. Well, how much duty will you look to save by using inward processing to start off with? What commodity codes are you going to be using at import? And obviously, if you're going to be changing the product, what are the commodity codes of the finished item? So it's really important that you understand that also when you import a commodity code, you may actually not change the commodity code with the process that you're actually doing, because it could be that you're doing an overhaul or a repair or a service on an item, but it doesn't change the commodity code of the product. Therefore, Section 6 and Section 7 of the SP3 application could have the same commodity code. The main thing that you understand from inward processing, lots of businesses fall into this trap, which is you can only use inward processing for the commodity codes that are listed within your application. It's not a carte blanche authorization to use any commodity code. It isn't. You can only use the ones that you are authorized to use. But don't worry. Lots of people don't understand, again, that you can make additions to your authorization by simply writing to your supervising office and requesting an addition to your authorization. So don't worry. If there are any changes, then as long as you do them before the shipment arrives, then you will absolutely be fine. Okay, so there's other things that you need to consider. Can you track and trace the products during the process? Because it is a requirement that you know at all times where your goods are within your process. And then one of the main things that companies do sort of fall down a little bit on is the control of freight forwarders. Can you control your forwarder import using the correct CPC to inward processing, or can you control your freight forwarder at the export, making sure that they discharge your liability correctly? And remember, it's your liability, not the freight forwarders. So always ensure that you are discharging your liability to one of the 20 plus methods of disposal. So the majority of companies usually use method of disposal number 1, which is a re-export. But you don't have to re-export goods under inward processing any longer. They could remain in the UK. So it's no longer mandatory to export goods from IP. So just with those few little bits and pieces and tips that I've given you there, hopefully that this short video will help you understand a little bit more around inward processing. And if you do need any help, then by all means, go onto our website.